hard to wait till the end.
Very true. Very true. All right, I will politely interrupt then when we get some questions.
Sure.
All right,
Anytime.
so we've just hit 11 a.m. on the West Coast here, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, everyone. So welcome to today's webinar, Bus Marketing 101, which is presented by LCT. I'm Lexi Tucker, the assistant editor here at LCT, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. I encourage you to ask questions during the webinar at any point in the chat box, and we'll try to address as many of them as possible during and after the initial presentation. Our presenter today is George Jacobs, president of Windy City Limousine in Chicago. So without further ado, I'm going to hand things off to George.
Hi, Lexi. Thank you, and welcome to everyone. It's kind of weird not having the interaction, but we'll do the best we can. So this is Bus Marketing 101. And the idea of it is to give you as much information as I possibly can about what happens in the bus world, why you should be in it, talking about the types of buses, the types of clients you have, colleges, corporates, pros and cons, insurance, DOT regulations, you name it. So this is the agenda slide here, and we'll go in the order that the agenda is listed. So we'll start with the buses themselves. And most people want to know about getting into the buses. They want to know, when should I buy a bus? We'll come back to that in just a minute. Let's talk about the types of buses and what you want to get. So there are used buses, there are new buses. What do? Do you decide to buy a new bus right away and go into it whole hog, or do you start with a used bus? Most people start with used buses. I will say that because of the cost involved and all the intricacies that you have to learn about the bus business. So most people do start with used buses. Most people start with smaller buses. They start with, probably everybody has a Sprinter type van in their fleet now, and then they grow into small mini buses and then larger mini buses and eventually motor coaches. And I'm going to strongly recommend that if you are not in the bus business, that you get into it, and that if you don't have a full-size motor coach in your fleet, that you eventually get into that as well. They are amazing. So you want to figure out cost. Are you going to buy a fancy one versus a plain one? Are you going to figure out, is it quality you're looking for? Buses are different. You have used buses that are plain Janes, that are shuttles, that are just perfect for just moving people back and forth from the airport or from one venue to another. You have other clients that are looking for something more upscale. They're not just looking at the butts they can put in the seat, but they're looking for the types of vehicles that you're presenting to them. They want something nice and upscale. They want to have all the amenities in it. Every vehicle today should have Wi-Fi and should have the outlets for people to charge their devices. They should all have that. They should be standard today. The usage, what are they going to be using the vehicles for? So you're going to determine what you get a lot of times based on what the usage is going to be. We have some vehicles that are used every day to take people to clinics, to take people from their homes to methadone clinics. And those type of vehicles do not have to be anything fabulous or exotic. They just have to be functional. In fact, you probably wouldn't want to send a really nice vehicle to the locations where we go. So it's a giant account, and it's very important to get this right and to take care of, these are our guests on the vehicles, but they don't need a fancy vehicle. On the other hand, we have customers that demand brand new, shiny, spanking, beautiful vehicles with all the tools and all the toys on them. You want to see if you get commitments from clients. If you have a commitment for somebody to give you a contract for the next 3 years and they say, I'd like to have a new vehicle, by all means do that. Because if you're guaranteed a 3-year commitment on a vehicle to run on a college campus or take somebody from a parking lot shuttle, you do that. We've just recently picked up the largest contract we ever got. A corporation is moving to another location in the city, and all their people who are used to being out in the suburbs are now going to have to take trains downtown to the city. And they're going to want us to pick up people at the train stations and at the remote parking lots, and then bring people from the hotels that their guests stay at. So we are going to be buying, we've already purchased a whole ton of new vehicles that will be dedicated to the shuttle. If I didn't have a 3-year contract, I'm not sure that I'd be giving them brand new vehicles. So you have to judge and weigh what's worth it. What do I get out of it, and what do I spend on it, and what makes it worth it? You have to look at your shuttle contracts versus charter. For those that don't know, there's 2 types of work. Charter is people calling you and saying, I need to go from point A to point B. How much do you charge? And there's shuttle work. And that's people that say to you every day we do many companies with their shuttle work. Every day from 5 in the morning till 9 in the morning, I need buses to pick up at the train stations and bring them to our offices. Between 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 7 o'clock in the evening, I need you to take them from the offices back to the train stations, running a continuous loop in a shuttle. For those type of shuttles, we will use transit buses. Those are like the regional transportation authority type buses. So there's different types of buses, different size buses, and different needs that people have that help you determine what you buy and when you buy it. You have to look at your financing with buses. Banks will finance buses, but they want to be sure. Lexi, I can hear something. I don't know if we have somebody live accidentally.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm at my office, so I'm going to mute my mic.
No problem. No problem. So you have to figure out financing on buses. In general, I like to write off a vehicle, a small minibus, a van or a minibus. I like to write them off over 3 to 4 years. A motor coach will last 20 years. My recommendation to you is that on a brand new motor coach, you write it off over 7 years. On a used motor coach, you write it off over 5 years. You can do whatever you want, and you should consult with your own accountants, but you want to determine how much per month you can afford versus the dollar amount that you're going to generate with these vehicles. So the sizes in general, we talked about that briefly. There are vans. Everybody should have vans in their fleet. They are so useful. Everybody uses them. They work nonstop. Vans do not have to be exotic, but then of course you have the Sprinter vans, which are nice. The new Ford Transits are very inexpensive, and they're brand new. They have everything you need, but they just aren't exotic. So you can pick and choose what you need. So you could pay $50,000 for a Ford Transit, or you could pay $75,000 for a Mercedes Sprinter. One of the things that I have used on the transit buses, and something I think will be shocking to you, is that if I buy a brand new SUV, I'm paying at least $55,000 to move 4 people. If I buy a new Ford Transit or a similar type of bus, I'm paying less money and I can put 14 people in the vehicle. To me, that's a no-brainer. I think that when you look at it that way, you could pay less money for a bus than you do for an SUV. How could you not be in the bus business? So the general sizes, we have standard sizes here at Windy City. We use 14 passengers, 23 passengers, 39 passengers, and our motor coaches are 56 passengers. And there are different uses for they can all move back and forth interchangeably, but in general, there's different things. The vans, shuttles, airport shuttles in small groups, obviously. The minibuses, the 23 passengers, they use those for dinner. Some airport flight crews come into play on those. A flight crew could almost always be handled in a 23 passenger minibus. I want you guys to all think about your local airlines and you go after the flight crews. It keeps the buses busy and it gives you steady work, and then you find other things that you can fill in with in between. Minibuses, 39 passengers, the corporate moves, the dinners, the dine-arounds, the shuttles, constant, nonstop usage of the 39 passengers. They are one of the workhorses in the fleet. Motor coaches, 56 passengers. Believe it or not, eventually every one of you that's in the bus business will own motor coaches, and I encourage you to do it sooner than later. If you have a motor coach and your neighbor does not, you will get so much more business. They are amazing. People use them for dine-arounds. They use them for corporate events, sporting events, airports, casino trips. Many of you can have casinos in your area. You can go to the casinos and say, I'll run this shuttle for you. I'll pick up in Chinatown, or I'll pick up in this neighborhood or downtown or at these 3 hotels, and take the people out to the casino. And they will pay pretty decent money. Sometimes they want to brand your bus with their name on it, and it's a big thing for them. So casinos are a good source of revenue. And now if you happen to be the bus company for the casino, you'll get other business from the casino. You'll find that this happens a lot, that people, once you get into the bus business, they'll come and give you their other business as well, and vice versa. If you're a limousine company, you could often get their bus business. Let's talk about farming out for a minute. And I'm going to sort of blitz through some of these things because there's so much to cover. And I want to give you time for questions and try and cover everything. So farming out locally. We're not going to talk about farming out of state, just do it. But as far as locally, people say, when do I buy a bus? And here's how it works. If you're farming out now, let's say you have no buses, and you're farming out enough to fill 50% of a bus. So you give somebody else 50% usage on a bus through your farm outs. It's time for you to buy a bus. And think of it as a clock. So you start at 12 o'clock. And when you get to 12:30, you're filling up a half an hour or a half of the size of that bus, or the half of the capacity. And now at 12:30, it's time for you to buy your own bus. And from 12:30 to 1 o'clock, you're going to be filling your own bus more and more and more and more, and you won't need to farm out at that point. Then when you get to 1 o'clock, now you have to start farming out again. So you've filled your bus to capacity, and now you start farming out the next bus to the other company again. And between 1 and 1:30, you're farming out. When it hits 1:30, it's time to buy another bus. And now you use your own bus between 1:30 and 2, and so on. So that's a good rule of thumb on when you should farm out and when you should buy your own vehicle. If you're farming out a half a bus for somebody else, it's time for you to buy a bus. Work together. One of my favorite things to talk about when I give lectures on this stuff is work together with somebody in your own area. If you'll ever see a race, the race cars can only go so fast individually. So if I can only drive 180 miles an hour on a racetrack, and you can only drive 180 miles on a racetrack, by working together, by drafting, on the racetrack, they get right tail to nose, and the first car breaks the wind for the second car, and the second car elongates the plane, which, think of it as a wing of an airplane. It elongates the plane, which makes the two vehicles have less, it comes to drafting coefficient, but it's like an airplane. It gives you more speed and more lift and more torque. So two vehicles running together, tail to nose, can go 200 miles an hour, where I could only go 180 and you could only go 180. Same exact thing in your bus business with your local affiliates. If you have a 5-bus company, you can only handle 5 buses worth. If they have a 5-bus company, that's all they can handle. If you work together and you advertise and say, I have a 10-bus company, because you know you could count on their 5 buses, and they can say the same thing, and now you fill in where you have 6 buses and you need 1 of theirs, and they have 7 buses and they need 2 of yours. It works perfectly. So work with a local person that you can trust, and then start doing buses back and forth. It really helps you and helps them at the same time. And that will grow your fleet faster. So let's go on here to the next slide, which is farming out, which I believe that I just covered on the last one. So we're going to skip farming out. I told you it's my first PowerPoint, right? All right, who do you target? This is a simple answer. The people that were on the line 5 minutes before we started got a sneak preview of the answer. Who do you target? The answer is everyone you know. There is no company out there. There's no organization. There's nobody you know that doesn't use buses. They all do. So you're going to go after everybody you can think of. Churches, hospitals, banks. Why banks? Because banks will arrange senior citizen outings. So go to your local big banks and you'll find that they have arranging senior citizen outings to go to casinos, to go to the theater, to go out to dinner, to go play any spectator sport. They arrange things for these people all the time. Your local park districts, they all do it. Banks, churches, hospitals, they all do this. They all have senior citizens that go out and do outings together. So you want to go after them. Law firms, why would a law firm need a bus? Because they have partners meetings, because they have large groups of people that they have to entertain, because sometimes they have a whole group of people that has to go to court together, and they have all this paraphernalia that they have to carry with them, and they don't want to drag it through the city and walk, and it's too much for any one car, so they do buses. All corporations, they bring in guests for various events. You have a convention, you know, a corporation is running a convention, and they need to shuttle their people from the airport to the hotel to their office out to off-site visits. The convention centers themselves, you have to get people to and from the convention centers. Whether you have a contract with the convention center or not, you still could have contracts with the corporations that are using those convention centers. So every corporation that attends a convention needs buses to get their people back and forth to go there. You have corporations and individuals that go to sporting events, concerts. You have events at hotels. You often need people drink, and people don't want to be responsible for drinking and driving. It's so prevalent these days. Drunk driving arrests are way down. So that's because of us, because we can provide somebody with a bus to get them safely where they want to go after the event is over. Weddings. This is unbelievable. Every wedding we do these days has buses in it. You are going to find that weddings are one of the most popular uses of buses. So in the traditional, I need a limousine for the bride, and I need a limousine for the family, the bridesmaids. There's too many, and it's too confining. They can get onto a bus where they can stand up, and they have lots of room. And you'll find that every single wedding includes buses. Whether it's the family being picked up at the hotels, the out-of-town people, or they want to go for pictures, buses make perfect for pictures. Brides no longer, we still do lots of limousines, but they would much prefer getting on and off a bus as opposed to getting in and out of a limousine. So you'll find that weddings all use buses. High schools doesn't sound like a big thing, right? Because they use school buses. Well, high schools use motor coaches and minibuses a ton. Why? Because anything over a certain distance, they can't use a school bus for. If they're in Chicago going up to Great America, it's about 40 or 50 miles away. There are school buses up there, but for the high schools in our area, they use motor coaches. They don't want to have the kids be on long trips on the highway in school buses, so they use motor coaches. We take all the kids in Chicago to go to Springfield. Springfield's about 150 miles away or a little more, and they do day trips to see our state capital, and they're all done in motor coaches. The trips where they go to other cities, there's always a traditional Washington trip every year. The kids go in motor coaches to Washington. If they're just going to the airport for some trip, they need motor coaches to go to the airport. There's no luggage storage on a school bus. So if you're going to the airport, you have to have a motor coach in order to be able to carry luggage. So there's an unending stream of targets on who you want to go after. Think about shuttles. We talked about it earlier, going from the hotel to work. So a lot of people have visitors, and they store them at hotels, and they need to get them out to their office. You need to shuttle them back and forth. Train stations, so many people have to get their people from train stations to their corporate headquarters. In Chicago, you can't think of a big corporation that doesn't use us to do that. You know, a lot of them are in the merchandise mart, and we'll be at the merchandise mart 75 times a day with buses going from one train station to the other and back and forth. And when you get a contract like that, it's not going to be for just one bus. They want somebody picked up every 10 minutes or 7 minutes. In the case of one corporation, they want their people picked up every 5 minutes. So think about how many buses I have to have in order to make a spin and pick people up in every 5 minutes. The casinos again. Casinos need shuttle buses, train stations, conventions, fan trips. Your local sports teams, the fans always go on road trips. So here in Chicago, we're 300 miles from St. Louis, we're 400 miles from Minneapolis, we're 180 miles from Indianapolis, we're 300 miles from Detroit, 300 miles from Cleveland. So there's fan trips all the time. Get with your professional sports teams, which happens to be the next slide, but get with the fan base and talk about those. Colleges, all colleges use buses of all sizes. We'll be coming up on that shortly. Flight crews, we mentioned it briefly, but go after every flight crew on every airline and let them know that you're there with buses and you can handle them. Flight crews are notoriously cheap. Somebody's got to do it, but they're cheap. So you can, I don't want you to give it away, but by getting your bus in the flow, if you have a guaranteed usage of your bus 4 times a day for flight crews, and now you can work it into these other things. So once you're done with this flight crew, you'll handle this job. Once you finish with this job, go get the flight crew. They fit in nicely. Hospitals, they have people, they have not only campuses where they have to move people back and forth, but hospitals have large groups of people that go on teaching visits. They visit other hospitals, other locations. They move people around like mad. Hospitals are a huge source of bus business. And then campuses of all type, whether it's a college campus or a corporate campus. I think about the people out in San Francisco, the Amazons and the people out there, the Microsofts, they must use 200 buses on their campus alone, just running parking lots, getting people here and there, doing different things. It's amazing what they do. So who do you go after? Everybody. All right, next we're going to look at sports teams, and we'll start with professional sports teams. Everybody wants to know about sports teams. What do you do with them, and how do you get into them? I'm not going to dwell too much today on how you get into them, but what you do with them is amazing. So you have teams that need to get back and forth to games. So we'll take the Bears for an example. The Bears, when they go to the airport on an away game, they will take 6 motor coaches. 6 motor coaches lined up like ducks. They have to be identical vehicles. They have to have Wi-Fi. They have to have outlet ports. The chauffeurs have to be pristine. They're very particular, and they want what they want, and they're entitled to it. So 6 vehicles. We have airport clearance. We go take them to the private side of the airport where they go to the cargo, and they have to, all the chauffeurs have to be cleared. And you have to do it in advance, and they want the same chauffeurs every time, but it's great work. So we take the Bears to the airport. We pick them up at the airport. When they go down for the day of the game, we take them to the hotel where they stay so that they can get to the game much quicker. They're not caught in traffic, and then we drive them to the game. When they practice, they do their, quote, spring training in Bourbonnais, about 50 miles from here. Well, they have to get there, and they have to get back and forth, and then they have to have people down there while they're there. So we take care of all of that wherever they go. When they go to Green Bay, they pile in 6 or 7 motor coaches, and off we go to Green Bay, Wisconsin, to make sure that they get there safely. So those are all-day road trips. We'll occasionally take them to other places. If they go to Indianapolis, they go in our buses. The White Sox. By the way, once you have the bus business, you'll pick up all of the other business from your sports teams. You'll get all the car service, all the players coming in, all the candidates coming in, the coaches coming in. When they do out-of-town stuff, we'll cover that next with the Cubs. So the Cubs, we do all the bus work for them, whether it's airport or going to Milwaukee or whatever it is they're doing. We take, by the way, the Cubs, the Bulls, the Bears, the White Sox, anytime they're in Milwaukee, they just ride our buses. That why should they waste an airplane when they can just take us there? The Cubs, every time they're out of town, they need work, and generally the farm out work will be SUVs, but they need sprinters in every town. So they'll have a night game, and during the day, the players want to go play golf. So we need to get them picked up and taken out to the golf course. And there could be 6 or 8 of them that want to go play golf. You need sprinters on every city that we go to. Various There are various types of buses that you need for sports teams all the time. Visiting teams. How about the San Francisco Giants? When they come in to play the Cubs or the White Sox, they require 6 buses. The Toronto Blue Jays only require 3 buses, but it's for the whole series. So when you have visiting teams, here's what happens with your bus. You pick them up at the airport, you take them to the hotel. The next day you bring them from the hotel to the stadium for practice, and often you take them back. Then you bring them back again. There's press. Sometimes they'll have you bring a busload of press. Sometimes they have family members and wives with them, and you'll have a busload of family. So there's times during the game day where you could have one bus on charter for 12 hours and 3 or 4 more buses on charter picking up the guests and the press and doing all the things that they need done. And that's just for visiting teams. So visiting teams can actually, in some cases, generate more work than your home team. So you want to look at home teams, you want to look at visiting teams. The White Sox, every time they go to the airport, they get in our buses. The Cubs, the same thing. Everybody goes to the airport. And those are nice, long charters. For the sports teams, since you have to be there on location an hour early, we charge them charters. Those are 5-hour charters, not just an airport transfer. So sports pro teams, let's see what else I have on that. After the games, they always want to go out. The players always want to go out. And the teams die 1,000 deaths when they think they're going out in an Uber or even in a taxi. They want them safe. So they prefer that we pick them up after the game to go out to dinner. They have 6 people going out to dinner. Maybe the whole team wants to go out to a late dinner. And we just arrange a bus for them. They tell us, sometimes it's last minute. They let us know how many people, where they want to go, what they want to do. Practice sessions, there's always something going on, especially with visiting teams and sometimes with your own home teams when they're on the road. Okay, charity events. Every professional sports team has charity events, and they're huge for them, and they want people brought in buses. They do things on the road. When the Bears play in Kansas City, they do some kind of a charity event, and they want us picking up. They send a train load of people to Kansas City, and then we pick them all up in buses and take them to the stadium. So there's an unlimited amount of things that you can do. You have groups going to the game. With the Cubs, when somebody calls up for a group bus, they're going to have a group of 40 people going to the game and they need tickets. The Cubs automatically have them call us or they book with us for the bus. So what's the best source you could possibly think of as groups is the professional sports teams that are booking them. There's 40 people that want to go to a ball game, and they're going to give that to us. Do the same thing with your local, like the Drury Lane theaters. Your local theaters have groups of people coming from senior citizen centers or wherever going to the theater. They have lunch and dinner at the theater, and they need transportation. You can go to those places and ask them for work from them. Concerts at the stadiums. All the professional sports teams will allow concerts at their stadiums. You want to book all that business. So sometimes it's just car service, but it's ancillary business that you get because of your buses. So if you have a concert, if you're connected with the stadium where you do the Bears work, now they have a concert at Soldier Field, you'll get all that business. And it could be the performer, it could be the entourage. Maybe you need a bus to bring all the equipment there. There's lots and lots of extra business that you'll pick up because of that. And then road trips. You just want to get involved with as much and as many road trips as you possibly can. They are pretty cool. All right, let's go next to colleges. So there's colleges and there's universities. And in some ways they're the same, in some ways they're different. So let's start first talking about colleges and their sports teams. You see the picture there of the Northwestern Bus. If you look at it closely, you'll see that it has the Windy City Limousine logo on the back of it. Northwestern came to me and they wanted me to logo this bus for them, and their teams fight over it. There's a pecking order. Football gets it first, then basketball, and then they fight like cats and dogs who gets this bus. They have I want to say the fan base fights over it. People look for it. They take pictures of it. They send it in. The boosters, they want this bus. The alums want this bus for all their events. So you can make a stir with a college. Northwestern University has 19 sports teams. We've got them all. So whether it's football, we need 6 buses at a time, or whether it's basketball, we only need 2 buses, or whether it's tennis, or their cheer team, or their debate team, or their fencing team goes in much smaller buses. We don't need the big motor coach for them. 19 sports teams. A small company could live off of the business of one university. They need shuttles on their campus. They have the Kellogg School of Business at Northwestern University. They use buses all the time to get people to and from downtown or wherever their locations are. They have conference centers and universities. They want to get people to and from their own conference centers. University of Chicago has the Gleacher Center, but it's downtown. It's 5 or 7 miles away from the University of Chicago. So they bus people from their campus to the Gleacher Center all day long, every day. So sports teams on colleges, you want to get, you get airports, you get visiting teams. I can't even imagine the amount of work we're getting on visiting teams coming into this area. I'll cover that in a minute. When your team is lucky enough to make a bowl game, we were in Nashville for the bowl game last year. They took 6 motor coaches for a week down to Nashville. 6 motor coaches for a week. Do the math. It's amazing. Student transfers to get to games. Northwestern is redoing their basketball arena. They have no basketball arena this year, so they're playing at the All-State Arena. Well, how do the kids on campus get there? So we arranged a deal with them where we would send buses and pick up kids at they want them to get there safely. They want them to get there and have fun doing it. So we pick them up and take them there. Airports, of course, there's all sorts of airport business involved with sporting teams and with the visiting teams. The venues, so Allstate Arena sees us doing all the Northwestern work. They've approached us and asked if we would do all their work. One thing leads to the next, to the next, to the next, okay? Here's something that has generated out of this. All these teams that fly into Chicago that go to, and this is giant travel corporations that handle hundreds and hundreds of colleges. They've come to know us and trust us with Northwestern and Notre Dame. And these people fly into O'Hare and they need to go to Madison and they need to go to Indianapolis and they need to go to Purdue and they need to go to Notre Dame and Indiana. So they just count on us to have buses going back and forth to take them to these places. And then the bus is on charter with them for the 2 days that they're there or 3 days. If it's a baseball team that flies in, they might be there they might keep a bus for a week because they're going to go to 3 different colleges and play 2 games each. So it's nonstop with colleges and sports. And then just regular colleges, what they do in the regular business end of the colleges, they shuttles and they have take people out to dinners and they have what they call citywide events. You're going to have people call you up for convention centers that are college related and they're saying we need to send people out to the diaspora. We need to send people everywhere. I want them to go here and there and everywhere. They call them citywide events and you're going to take every bus in the city and participate in this. And you want to be invited to do those type of things. The conventions, sorry, let me go back to colleges for a second. They have medical centers. And the medical centers all use buses. They take people sightseeing, they take people to dinners, they have visiting dignitaries, they take groups of people out, they go to other colleges, they go to other medical centers to observe and to visit and to learn and study. They do have teaching visits. They do all sorts of things at universities as well as at hospitals. You can just consider them almost the same. Hospitals and universities use buses nonstop. And then they have campus shuttles.
George?
Yes.
We actually have a question if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Let's see. This is from Carrie. She asks, are the college branded buses restricted to the schools only, or do you use them for other clients when they're not being used?
The great question. They're restricted to this school. I can't use them for other colleges, but there are actually people that reach out and ask, is there any way that we could have the Northwestern bus? So the answer is you can use them for other things, and sometimes it's cool. Think about the Bean, how well known the Bean is in Chicago. If I had a bus that had a picture of the Bean on it, people would request it. So Northwestern is a monument in Chicago. People request the Northwestern bus. I wouldn't use it to take Wisconsin to visit Northwestern. That wouldn't be right. So no, I don't use it for other colleges, but I'll use it for anybody else that would like to have it. Cool question. There's campus shuttles, whether it's a hospital or a college, you have these shuttles where people have to get back and forth from parking lots, remote parking lots, between dorms and buildings. You know, in the winter, it's hard to walk anywhere. So they need shuttles for convenience and for safety. They want to know that their people are safely getting back and forth to where they need to go.
I've actually got one more question.
Sure.
They're asking, this is from John. He says, are these wraps you're talking about or permanent?
You can do wraps two different ways, and you should learn about them. The wrap on the Northwestern bus is permanent, and it runs about $12,000 or $13,000. But you know, I have a 5-year contract with Northwestern. That bus will be sitting there wrapped for the next 5 years. So that allocates the cost substantially less. Then you have temporary logos or wraps that you can put on vehicles. You could do that for a couple $1,000s, and usually your client will pay for that. So we sent 2 Budweiser wrapped buses to the Super Bowl. We wrapped them on day 1. They ran at the Super Bowl for 7 or 8 days. They came back on day 8 and we unwrapped them. So you can pass on that cost, or you can make a little money on it. Wrapping and unwrapping for a short term is a couple thousand versus the long-term wrap of 12 or 13,000. There's another thing we do for colleges that you should all think about getting into. At the holiday time, how do these kids get home back to the big cities? So I can only talk about Chicago, but we have all the colleges, Purdue, Indiana, Illinois, Eastern Illinois, whatever they are, and they need to get the kids back to the Chicago area. And they could probably take a train, but the train goes downtown, it doesn't go where they want to go, or they could rent a car, they could do all sorts of things. So there are bus companies that put together programs where they charge the kids X and they put a busload of people going to the Oak Brook Mall. We make 3 stops in Chicago, one on the south side, one in Oak Brook, one on the north side. And then going back to college after the break, we do the same thing. So we're not doing it, we're hired by the people that put it all together. So we don't have any of the hassle. We're just on a railroad track. We go to the college, we pick them up, we drop them off, and on return, we take them back to college. It's a nice use of your vehicle. And think about it, during holidays, your vehicles don't work as much. Your vehicles are going to sit more during holidays. Now you have an opportunity to use your vehicles when they would be down. So it's a cool thing. I think
one more question.
Yeah.
Do you charge the university for the Northwestern wrap or factor it into your contract pricing?
On the wrap, we did this, and we did another thing. We put a satellite on the vehicle as well. And what we did was we split the cost with them on both the wrap and the satellite. And if they want other buses wrapped temporarily, they pay for that. That make sense? Well, I guess nobody can answer me. Sorry. Anyway, it's how we do it, and it's a good rule of thumb. With wrapping in general, when you wrap a bus for somebody, you logo a bus, it's a process. So you need to be aware that your bus is going to be down the day before and the day after the event. So if you're charging them $1,000 a day while they're in town, you also charge them $1,000 a day for the 2 days that the bus is out of service. That might not sound appropriate to you, but it is appropriate and they expect it. They understand that if they take a bus and your bus and put it out of service for a day, they have to pay for it. And then the cost of the wrapping is up to you. You can pass it on or you can make some money on it. That's up to you entirely. So we're going to move on to the next slide. And we're going to talk about corporate business. And I've covered some of it already. It's everything you could imagine. It's shuttles, it's dinners, it's the citywides, it's the conventions, it's the airports, it's sporting events, it's hotels, work, dinners. It's everything you can think of. Your corporate clients use buses. Sure, they go in sedans and SUVs all day long to the airport, but they have events. They have event planners on staff. Every corporate business has event planners and sometimes an entire event planning department on staff and in-house. What's their job? It's to plan events. If they're so intent on events, then you know that they've got to have millions of things during the year where they're using buses to get their people to and from the various events. It's nonstop in the corporate business where they have events. Can I identify for you at the moment exactly what everything is? No, but I can tell you that every corporation uses buses every day for something. Every day. Take McDonald's. They have daily shuttles of taking people to Loyola Hospital. They want to have, I don't know what the reason is, I don't remember, but every day they take people from their campus to the hospital and back and forth and back and forth. They are some sort of a learning experience, what they do there. Every corporation, every hospital, every college, they move people back and forth every day. They have full-time corporate event planners on staff. Sometimes they're planning meetings out of town. They're planning destination meetings. Well, that's good for you too, because once you get in with a college or a corporation and you let them know that you're capable of handling all their business anywhere, and now you'll be able to start farming out more business. Maybe they have a meeting in Phoenix, so you have your Phoenix affiliate and you farm that out to them, but you get the credit for it. Assuming it goes well, you get the credit and you make some money on it. So once you let these people know, once you get in with them and you show them what you can do in bus work here, then you get their bus work elsewhere too. And sometimes it's ridiculously huge what they have. Over and over and over, they do things. They have corporate retreats. They plan for hundreds and hundreds of people. Up at the Super Bowl, we had sort of an unplanned event. It was planned by Budweiser, but they didn't tell us about it. We had to get 800 people to a casino for an evening dinner, a soiree that they were having during Super Bowl. Okay, they didn't have any particulars. They just told us we're going to have to get 800 people to this casino. Hello, that's kind of tricky. But usually you'll have things that you're planned out well in advance. And you, by being an expert on buses, will actually be able to help these people. They will come to love you when you can tell them what to do, what size bus. And if they need a 14, don't sell them a motor coach. Sometimes people don't know what they need or they don't realize that buses come in all sizes. So you'll be a hero to them by saying, hey, I can save you a bunch of money. If you use two 14s at a 39 on this because of the timing, you don't need two motor coaches at all. And they save money and they're grateful because you've got their best interests at heart. You're looking out for them. So corporate business, I'm sort of breezing through it, but corporate business is the bread and butter. Every single company uses buses and you want to have that business. So we'll move on. And I'll take a drink of water. Okay, pros and cons of owning buses. There's a lot of horror stories and there's a lot of great things. So we're going to go through the pros first because pros are better than cons. Buses are money makers. You are going to make a ton of money using buses. Period. End of story. You will be happy that you have buses. Buses make you a one-stop shop. So companies are all the time looking for a sedan here or a limousine there or an ADA vehicle here or a motor coach there, and they have to go to 4 different companies for this. Well, what if you're the one company they can go to for everything? Now they tell everybody within their company, oh, use Windy City Limousine. They have sedans, they have SUVs, they have luxury sedans, they have vans, they have sprinters, they have limousines, they have ADA vehicles, they have 14, 23, 39, 56 passenger vehicles. They have party buses. I mean, think about it. There is no vehicle that we don't have. We have transit buses. We have everything. So it makes you a one-stop shop. And you get more business when people can just use you as their go-to. You're a one-stop shop, you're going to get a lot more business. If you choose to put logoing on your buses, it's free advertising. Some people believe that the buses should be blank because you're handling for affiliates. But the truth is that affiliate clients know that they're being handled by an affiliate in another city anyway. And if it has your logo on the bus, you're not doing a disservice to your affiliate. You have to go by what your affiliate says. If they say they want it unmarked, you have to do that. But in general, having marked buses is good for you because people in your area see them all the time and they get familiar with them. Just like the commercial for McDonald's. Every kid grows up wanting to go to McDonald's on their birthday. Do they make the greatest hamburger? No, but people get used to it and they want it. So they see your buses and they want them. So I would logo all your buses and let them be free advertising. When you have buses and they can see them, you appear to be bigger than you are to clients. They know that there's something special about you. You're visible. It's like when you put billboards up, you become special. It gets you other business that you would not have gotten, whether it's sedan or SUV business or people that just call you because they saw your buses and they know that you have buses. You know, they're at a concert and they see your bus there and they took some rickety, broken down bus to get there. And they say, next time let's call this Windy City company. That looked like a beautiful bus. So you'll get extra business just by having your name on the side of the bus. Buses retain their value better than any other vehicle, and they have a longer lifespan than other vehicles that we buy. So the cons are sometimes bad. You're going to run into tons of damage and bodywork. Sometimes your chauffeurs are going to use these buses as pinball machines, and you can't imagine the things that they have done to me. We have a brand new bus, a brand new motor coach, and it had an air conditioning unit on the roof, and somebody went under a viaduct that was too small, ripped the air conditioning unit off the bus, and punched a hole in the roof of the bus. That bus was out of service for me for 4 months. It only went back in service a week ago. We had to put in an insurance claim, but I have a $10,000 deductible on my insurance. So that accident cost us out of our pocket $10,000 and 4 months of no use of that bus. That's a disaster. Okay, it happens. We have lots of buses. It didn't kill us, but it can happen. You need to be aware of it. Your chauffeurs, they have to be the top-notch best people. They have to care more than anybody you have. The cost of the vehicles, you have to decide whether you want used or new, nice versus exotic. The financing, people will sometimes take advantage of you. If you have shaky credit and you have to lease the vehicles, you're going to pay more. If you have a bus that's willing to finance, a bank that's willing to finance them, that's the best way to do it. So if you can do that, sometimes you have to put a large down payment on a bus, maybe as much as 20%. Now it becomes harder to buy a new bus for $500,000. So now maybe you want to buy a bus for $180,000 that's used, but it's going to give you another 5 years, and you only have to pay $36,000 instead of $100,000. So there's all that to consider. Insurance, the high deductibles, which I already mentioned. Insurance costs a lot on buses, and you have to have a larger liability than you do with your cars. Fuel, we're held hostage to fuel. But the good news is on buses, you pass your fuel along. So on every bus, you say automatic gratuity for the chauffeur and an automatic fuel charge. I charge 10% fuel on all buses on all trips. Probably we make money on some of them, but buses burn fuel and you need to recover that, and you need to make it a line item for customers to see. Fuel charge on buses is perfectly okay, but we are held hostage for fuel. Regulations, there's so many regulations. You got to learn them and you got to pay attention to them and follow them. Errors are very costly. A bus shows up on the wrong day. If it's late, you got a customer screaming and hates you because you didn't show up on time. And if it's early, you've screwed the chauffeur and the client thinks you're stupid. So a lot of things can happen with errors. You got to be so meticulous in double checking orders for buses. You can leave people behind. My pet peeve of all time. You get an order for 30 people and your chauffeur picks up 21 and they tell them, oh, the other people walked. Now they leave. And lo and behold, the other people show up. You got to either go back or you got to find other transportation for them. Either way, it costs you money and you look stupid. repairs and breakdowns. You know, you have to have a backup plan. What happens if you're on a charter with 50 people on the bus and they're on the way to a ball game or a wedding or something special and the bus breaks down? How are you going to recover? You got to have that. So those are the pros and cons in general of buses. There are lots more that you will think of yourself. Hourly minimums. This is the easiest thing of all. For vans, we use a 2-hour minimum. For minibuses, a 3-hour minimum. For motor coaches, a 5-hour minimum. And I don't want you to deviate on the motor coaches. A 5-hour minimum is a 5-hour minimum. Don't give in. Don't say to somebody, well, we're only using it for 2 hours. Okay, I'll give you a 2-hour rate. Don't do that. I'll give you a trick in a minute, but don't deviate from 5 hours on the motor coaches. They're too expensive and too valuable to you to take less than 5 hours. On Saturdays with the minibuses, where they're normally 3 hours, I would make Saturdays 4 hours. I do make Saturdays 4 hours because it's like New Year's Eve. It's like the Super Bowl where the hotel rates go up. Saturdays when everybody wants them, you want to maximize your return on a Saturday. So make Saturdays 4 hours. If you have a prom in a bus, make it a 7-hour prom, but you could split it. So they could do 2 hours up at the front end and take pictures and ride around and yell out the window, and then go to prom. And then afterwards, when they want to go out to dinner and out on the lake and take a boat ride and all that, so you could split it up 2 hours and 5 hours. But make a prom 7 hours in a bus. Here's a trick that I want you all to use. When you do an airport or a local transfer, and a local transfer could be taken from a hotel to a restaurant. When you're doing a local transfer, and I don't mean staying there with them and waiting, you're just doing a pick and drop, you can do a lesser rate on a motor coach or on any vehicle. The rule of thumb is take 2.5 to 3.5 hours worth of time on a motor coach or on a regular bus, and that's what you charge for a transfer. So if your motor coach is $150 an hour for 5-hour minimum, $750, and you're going to do a transfer to the airport, charge them 3 hours. So you charge them $450, or 3.5 hours, charge them $5.25 to go to the airport. And that's what a transfer rate should be. So you're allowed to do transfers because that's just a pick and drop and it doesn't mess you up. Okay? Pass through all taxes, airport taxes, city taxes, show them as a line item and pass them through. Okay? So ours is easy. We're getting toward the home stretch here. I think 2 more slides. So safety, DOT regulations and compliance. This is a whole workshop in itself. I can't explain it to you here, but you should take a workshop on it. Call Keith Johnson at Reston Limousine. He's one of the experts on it. And Keith Johnson, Reston Limousine. Follow all here. Study, attend classes, have an expert come in, and listen and learn. Have your chauffeurs go to classes with you. Follow all the rules. You want to be safe anyway. Training for chauffeurs, lots of it, and reviews. DOT is not the enemy. I know a lot of people think they are. They're not the enemy. DOT, they just want us safe. That's what we want too. Learn when you need a second chauffeur. Explain and charge accordingly. If somebody wants more than 10 hours driving, they need a second chauffeur. I had people at Super Bowl wanting 19-hour days. We sent second chauffeurs for them. And we charge them, and you don't just charge what the chauffeur cost is. You make money on the second chauffeur. Sometimes you have to buy them a plane ticket and send them ahead so that they're legal to get on the bus 8 hours later after the first chauffeur is done. There's lots to learn about this. I encourage you to learn everything there is to know about DOT. Lastly, the last thing I want to say on this is that do not hire any drivers. Bus drivers should work for school bus companies. When you have a chauffeur driving a bus for you, they are a bus chauffeur. You get them to understand that. Do not hire bus drivers. Do not allow bus drivers in your fleet. Hire only bus chauffeurs. And it will be worth your weight in gold if you get them thinking that way and you think that way. It's really, really important. And the last slide we have is on insurance. There's lots of different insurance companies and lots of different carriers. I want you to shop. I want you to find an agent that can shop on your behalf. Don't just take what they tell you. Don't just say that this is the only thing you can get. Shop. Call other people in your industry. Call other people in your area. Ask them what they're doing for insurance. You can call any large company and ask where they're getting their insurance. You're not limited. If you're in New Jersey, you're not limited to buying insurance in New Jersey. You can buy insurance at Austin, Texas. It doesn't matter as long as you follow the rules and apply the laws and work hard. That concludes my lengthy, windy presentation. The floor is open. Lexi?
All right, we've got a whole bunch of questions lined up. So our first one is from Tony, and he has kind of a two-part question. One is, how hard is it to maintain the coach buses versus limos?
It's harder because there's lots more things that can go wrong, so you're going to have specialized mechanics. We have a shop. We have our own shop. At some point, when you're big enough, you will want to have your own shop. It's the same as farming out versus doing it yourself. You lose control somewhat when you farm out. You're going to pay through the nose for body work at body shops, and you have to lose the bus for a while. You have to get it there and back. You want to try and do it yourself. What was the second part? Say it again.
That was the first part, and then the second part of the question is, do you always need a parking spot due to its large size? So
do I always need a parking spot? What?
Due to the large size of the bus.
Well, you need a parking lot. You need to park the buses somewhere safe and convenient where they can get in and out. So yes, the answer would be yes, you need a designated parking spot for buses. We stripe our parking lot. We have certain size buses park against the wall and certain size buses park in the middle. And we're lucky enough that it's a private street. We actually own the street, and we're lucky enough we can stage buses right on the street.
Excellent. Then we have a question from Tom. He asks, how do you calculate utilization? How much does your utilization need to be?
There is a formula. I don't know that I live by it, but let's say this. You need to use your buses, I would say 16 to 18 days per month. If you're using them that much, you're doing okay. Over that, if you're using them 20 to 25 buses days a month, you're hitting a home run. If you're only using them 10 to 12 days a month, you're losing money.
Excellent. And then the second part of the question was, can you explain yard cost or fixed cost per bus?
I don't think I can do that here, Lexi. I think that's too complicated. You just take your rent for your parking lot and divide it by your number of buses and per month, and that's your yard cost.
Excellent. A question from Andy. What is the target gross revenue per 56 passenger motor coach?
That is a great question. I don't know that I know that answer, but I'll see if I could figure it out. I think you want to, motor coaches should they can generate easily $25,000 to $30,000 a month. I think your target is going to be, let's say they're $1,000 a day, so your target's going to be $18,000. If you're generating $1,000 a day. If you're only generating $800 a day, you still want to do 18 days, so your target dollar amount would be less. So take your average daily bookings times 16 to 18 days.
Excellent. Oh, I know this is going to be a hot topic, and you kind of touched on it. How do you find new drivers? Everyone needs to hire more and can't find them.
You advertise. Actually, we don't have any problem. We run classes every week, and we fill up. Make it attractive to them for them to work for you. So again, you're hiring bus chauffeurs, not bus drivers, and make that clear to them. So during the summer, it's easy because all the school bus drivers are out, and many of them are capable and qualified. There are people that are truck drivers that can be classed up and drive your vehicles. We go to workshops and seminars. We go to job fairs. We go to the unemployment office and post listings there. We put stuff online. I think maybe one of the key things we do is we have a sticker on the back of every bus. And what it says, it's a bright yellow sticker. It's on the left-hand rear of every bus. And it says, CDL chauffeurs wanted. So CDL and chauffeurs are the same sentence. CDL chauffeurs wanted, earn $27 an hour. Now, how can I say $27? Because let's say they're getting paid $15, but don't forget I'm giving them an automatic 10 or 12% gratuity. So it comes to about $27 an hour with the gratuity. That's a good pay. People see it. You put it on the back of the bus because people are always passing buses. You put it on the left-hand side because people are driving on the left side of buses when they pass them. So on the back of every one of my vehicles, all bus drivers and chauffeurs see them. All other people see them that know people that need work. So use your own bus as a billboard for work. It's tasteful. It's only about a foot by a foot. Not going to offend anybody. No affiliate's going to see it because people don't enter or exit. They're never in the back of the bus. So it's a cool little gadget. And it'll get you lots of inquiries.
Excellent. Let's see. Someone asks, how many total 50-plus passenger buses does Windy currently have? And do some have company logo and some don't?
I have 25. They all have company logo. The only ones that wouldn't have company logo are the ones that are brand new. What happens to us is that we get brand new buses in, and my operations manager is a pig, and he won't let us take them out of service to paint them and logo them. So we'll be running a white bus for a month because we can't take it away from them and get it painted and logoed. But if we have them in the fleet, if they're ours, they're logoed. We do bring in buses. We do bring in buses from Florida and the South during our busy time when it's slow there, and those buses do not get logoed. They stay. We might put a poster up on it, a temporary logo, but we don't actually logo those buses.
Excellent. And then Todd asks, do you lease or purchase your motor coaches or minibuses outright?
It's a variety. If you can afford to do it, you want to finance them. If you can't afford to do it, you want to lease them. And sometimes they'll make attractive offers on leasing. I encourage everybody to talk to Volvo. They have a new lease program where if you're a first-time user, you can lease a motor coach for $4,000 a month for a year. And then at the end of the year, you can buy it and use all the money that you've paid toward the purchase, or you can just walk away from it. That's a cool lease. Normally, I'm a purchaser. And as far as motor coaches, you have a variety of motor coaches out there. They're all good. I don't know of any terrible motor coach companies at the moment.
Do you hold your drivers financially responsible for accidents?
Yes, the chauffeurs have to put up, all chauffeurs, whether they're sedan chauffeurs or motor coach chauffeurs, have to put up a fee. I want to say it's either $500 or $750. They put it up. It draws interest in the event of an accident that they are responsible for, and it's adjudicated that they are responsible. An at-fault accident, they are obligated to pay up to 1/2 of what our cost is. So if they knock off a mirror and it's $200, they're going to pay $100. If they hit a gas pump and it's $5,000 in damage, they're limited to the $750 they have put up. Excellent. And something else, let's talk about safety. We give them a bonus for being safe. At the end of the year, they can earn up to $500 per chauffeur for being accident free. So it's $100 the first year, $200 the second, $300 the third, and so on. And we paid out probably 35 $500 bonuses this year. 35 people that have been 5 years without an accident. That keeps your rates down. It's really worth it to get them incentivized to do this.
And then the follow-up question to that is that legal in every state or just Illinois?
I'm granting you legality in every state. There is no place it's not legal as long as you have it in writing and explain it with the chauffeur. Chauffeur comes to work for you. It's a condition of contest. We're going to collect a security deposit from you. If you have an at-fault accident, we're going to deduct that. It's not a fine. It's not a fee. You're not taking this pay away. It's part of our contract. We need to keep our chauffeurs safe. And so you could lose money. You could lose your deposit, but you could also get a $500 check. I'm sure it's legal everywhere.
Says, George, do you recommend people setting up a separate company to own and operate motor coaches?
I do. I think it's just a safe thing to do. You might want to set up a separate company if you have either a minority or a woman-owned business enterprise type of thing, which that could be simply owning the vehicles. That works, or it could work. I don't want to give you advice on it. It could work. And then having an arm's length transaction from the ownership of the vehicles. If something terrible goes wrong, they could sue the corporation that owns the vehicles. They can't sue the connecting corporation. So you're protecting yourself by having an arm's length relationship.
Andy asks, do collegiate casino or sports teams require 10 million versus mandatory 5 million in insurance?
Yes, we carry 10 million on all of our vehicles because we do the Chicago Public Schools. All school systems require 10 million. So the colleges, I probably could do 5 million. I choose to do 10 million because we have it for the schools anyway. So casinos do not. Casinos they have minimum requirements. Colleges and high schools and grammar schools all have the $10 million requirement. A lot of times corporations have no idea what they want and they just try and get as much as you can give them. If you have $5 million coverage and a corporation tells you they want 10 million, you say, sorry, this is what we have. It's normal standard. And there's a trick for all of you, for all your vehicles and all your clients, is just tell them, I'm going to name you as additional insured. It's free. It costs you nothing. Everybody can do it. But a lot of people don't know that they can do it. Name them as additional insured. Name their board of directors as additional insured.
The next question is, what are the standard hourly rates for each vehicle?
Let's see. 14 passengers are, I'm going to give you the base rates. So 95, 23s are 110, 39 passengers are 130, and motor coaches are, no, I'm wrong. I think the motor coach is 130 something with, in general, it's 10 or $15 increase per hour. So between 95 and 130, and then you add on the fuel and the gratuity. So I think our motor coach costs come out to about 160 an hour.
Oh, this is a good question. Do you find the coach business easier to manage and operate rather than a traditional car service?
No, I do not. It's harder. And the reason is because coaches all have to be accounted for every day. We wash every vehicle every day. We inspect every vehicle every day, both before the trip and after the trip. Every vehicle has to be cleaned out. People use them as their personal garbage dumps. We have bathrooms on coaches. They have to be dumped. There's so many things to think about and worry about with coaches. There's logging. Now it's electronic logging, should be much easier. There's DOT requirements. There's hours of service. There's a million things. Cars, it's sort of set it and forget it. We can have an SUV or a sedan. The chauffeur takes it home with them. They're responsible for getting it washed, keeping it clean. And if there's any damage, they have to report it. And obviously we'll know who did the damage when we see it because it's them. There's regularly scheduled oil changes, for instance, on a car. They bring it in at every 3,000 miles to get the oil change. On a bus, it can go into regen. Regen is a new system they have that's for particulate filters and for making them run cleaner. But your bus could be on the highway and all of a sudden it goes into limp mode because it's starting to regen and it didn't warn you. It should always warn you, but it doesn't always. So buses are much harder, but I promise you they're much more valuable to you and they will increase your bottom line much more than the headaches.
The next question is regarding buying a coach. Do you see advantages or disadvantage to a traditional purchase versus a track lease?
I see a big advantage to a traditional purchase because you own the vehicle, you decide when you want to sell it, you have a frame of reference for, I'm going to write it off over 7 years, and at 5 years, I've written off 5/7 of it. If I paid $500,000 for it, I paid off 350,000, so I have 150 on the books, and yet I can sell it, or I could trade it in for 250, and I can show $100,000 profit. Track leases are much trickier. They have their purpose. They have their place where they could be. Track leases are for a different type of a user. I'm not going to give that kind of advice. I suggest that you talk to both bankers and leasing companies and find out what's best for you. I like to buy, but I do lease.
Excellent. How do companies set up what is required to empty the waste from the lavatory in the motor coaches?
Well, the simplest way is you go to someplace that has it, and you empty it out. It doesn't even have to be emptied out every day. Usually on short trips, people aren't using it. There's a second tank that drops from one tank to the second tank. So you're actually emptying out the second tank. And in general, there's no smell once it drops from the first to the second tank. You can go to a place, a trucking company, not a trucking company, a motor coach company that has a dump, and you can ask to use their dump, and usually they'll charge you $25 to $40 a piece. What we did here is we built our own dump into the sewer system with the permission of the village. So we just we're like a toilet here. So we have a dump site right in our shop. So the bus backs in, dumps the toilet, and then pulls forward and gets washed. And it goes right into the sewer system. You can get it from somebody else. You can do it yourself. Don't do it illegally. Do it legally. I can't tell you the horror stories if you do it illegally.
Excellent. And then I think we're going to use this as our last question since we're kind of way over the time limit. What is the average marketing and advertising budget for a new company just starting?
I'm going to say it in a way that you'll think is silly. Spend all that you can. One of the best returns on your investment dollars is marketing. So let the people know what you have and get it out there. Go to radio stations and barter for advertising on radio stations. They need a bus to take people to winners of a contest to a concert. Well, barter for that. Tell them you'll do that for free if they'll mention you 40 times on the air. Trade with people, go to barter corporations, get out there and get your name knowing, because that's how you get ahead, is by getting your name out there. Advertise in any place you can think of. Go to banquet halls and advertise for weddings. Go to convention centers and advertise for bus transportation to and from corporations. All you can spend, whatever you got, spend it.
Excellent. And unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. But for anyone who asked a question that wasn't answered or have a question that you didn't even ask, please feel free to reach out to George. His email address is G as in great, Jacobs, GJacobs@windycitylimos.com. We hope you all enjoyed today's event, and we want to thank you for your time and participation. At the end of the webinar, you'll receive a short survey. If you could please take a few minutes to fill that out so we can continue to improve, it would be greatly appreciated. I also want to mention this webinar will be available on demand on the LCT website under the More tab, where you'll find a link to the video portion of our site. I also want to say a huge thank you to George, man. That was incredible.
You're welcome, Lexi. Thank you. I just love helping people in the industry, and if this helps somebody, I'll be so happy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for attending, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.
Bye, all. Thank you.